Welcome to your Healing Place podcast with Linda and Mindy. It is our desire to address common concerns of how abortion and faith intersect in order to validate the emotional pain and grief that abortion can bring and give hope that recovery is possible. We're talking about the grieving cycle still, and the five areas of the grieving cycle by Kubler-Ross, and that's the denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I want to just stop and talk about anger for a little bit. And it's not a step, it's not linear. Again, we can bounce all around in these areas, but anger comes when we're in that grieving cycle. Anger comes, and anger is a powerful emotion. That's where we feel like we can justify, whether we justify what we've done or we justify our anger at others, and we just hold on to this bitterness and this festering attitude. We're learning to be angry in this culture too. I think it's something that we're becoming more and more. Go out on social media and you'll see it all over the place. We're just learning to practice anger. Anger was something that I know I really struggled with, and not just abortions, for a lot of things. I mean, we haven't talked about the road to abortion and how abortion doesn't come by itself yet, and we'll do an episode on that. But I was angry at a lot of things. Why this? Why did this happen to me? Why couldn't have this been this way? And I just let that anger fester and fester and fester and became so much a part of who I was that I didn't even know that I actually carried and lived a victim mentality. I had no idea because it was so much just normal. It's just normal. It's just who I was. And it's how I protected myself, oddly, even though I wanted people around me. But I thought, well, if I get angry, I'll keep them at a distance. But that backfires when you're getting into a relationship, or you're getting into marriage, or you're getting into, even friendships. That begins to backfire because you can't both keep people at a distance and want close relationships with people. It doesn't work. That's where toxicity and unhealthy behaviors start to come in. So anger was huge for me. And I was angry that I was even, the first abortion that I had, I was pregnant I had been dating this guy, and I got pregnant, and we were broke up by the time I ever found out. In fact, I didn't even know I was pregnant. When we broke up, I'd already started dating somebody else. I moved in with him, and shortly after I found out I was pregnant. So I knew who it was because of the gestation, how far along I was. And that guy that I was living with said, well, it's me, the baby. And my lifestyle at that time was, well, gosh, I need love. I mean, I desperately needed love. I was starving for it. And I was like, well, that's easy then. I know exactly what we need to do. And that we had an abortion, or I did. And that guy's no longer in the picture. I mean, he hasn't been in the picture for years. And I was angry about that for years, because, I thought, well, you promised, right? You told me, and it was just an awful place to be. I didn't have any discernment, which didn't help.
So anger at the situation that you're in. I've heard from many women, why did God let me get pregnant to start with?
Yes, blaming
So it
God.
could be God, it can be
Mm-hmm.
the people involved, it can be just the situation in general. It can be the abortion clinic staff that lied to you and didn't tell you the truth. I know for me, at 22 weeks, I said, "But isn't it a baby?" And she said, "No, it's not a baby."
Mm-hmm.
That was a direct lie. And so
Mm-hmm.
there could be some anger at that.
I
And
know
then,
people are angry at the protesters, and
right.
I know there are protesters out there that are yelling and screaming and saying, mean things, but I know there are also many protesters out there because there's a big movement of people going out to love and pray, and they were angry at all of them, not really understanding their message and what they were really trying to do, and they're just angry at the protesters for making her feel bad to go in that center in the first place.
That's right, because it was being pricking her conscience as she went in. So there's
Mm-hmm.
anger there for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the anger can turn against ourselves.
Hmm.
And that's generally after in the healing process. And we're going to get into depression in a future one where anger is frozen and
Yeah.
turns to depression. So they're closely related there. But I think a lot of women are just angry that they didn't have the courage to stand up and say
Oh
no.
gosh, I was angry at myself.
Yeah.
100%. Were you angry? Did you experience anger? I mean, you don't tend
Um,
to be an angry person anyway, I don't see. So that's one.
No, no, not so much. And it was mostly at myself because I really
Mm,
didn't have much else to blame.
yeah.
But there was an aspect of the anger with God as well, is that whole why did you let me go through with it?
Mm, hmm.
Because I was a Christian at the time, and I don't know what I expected, handwriting on the wall.
Yeah.
He lets us make our choices, and
Hmm.
as painful as that is,
Hmm.
he will not physically stop us. And it's easy to say, well, why didn't you cause me to have a car wreck on the way there?
Right.
But
Right.
that is not how God usually works. He gives
Right.
us free will. So, but whether it's justified or not, it's still anger towards him.
Hmm. Thankfully, God can handle it. I,
Yes.
I love that the Psalms are so relatable when we read in the book of the Bible and look at just some Psalms that I know David wrote where he was very angry, you know,
Yes.
and
And he expressed it.
yeah, angry at God, angry at other people for his why the way he was being treated, and God already
And you
knows.
know, and you know what? We tend to think that all anger is bad.
Mm-hmm.
But anger is a legitimate part of the grieving process. It's the way
Mm-hmm.
God designed us.
That's true.
And it's
That's true.
important to walk through that anger, not just stuff it.
Right.
And I think it's fascinating that God has anger. There's a lot of verses where God is a wrathful God,
Mm-hmm.
and God hates
Mm-hmm.
evil because it hurts people,
Mm-hmm.
and that he is angry with us.
Mm-hmm.
I think of a friend that her father, it was an incest situation, and he was taking her to the abortion clinic
Mm-hmm.
each time, which did nothing but cover up his sin,
Mm-hmm.
and keep her trapped in that. But I think that makes me angry. It
Mm-hmm.
makes God angry, and
Yes.
I think some of the situations we're in, there is a place for righteous anger
Mm-hmm.
at the sin and the pain and the
Mm-hmm.
destruction this world is serving up. I think
Yeah,
God is angry with us at some of these situations.
certainly. Certainly. And then he mitigated his own anger by going to the cross.
Yes.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was inspired by the many conversations had through the years with women struggling from the emotional pain associated with abortion. Thank you for allowing us into your healing journey. Subscribe on major platforms where podcasts can be heard. Learn more about virtual abortion recovery healing at www.anevenplace.com. The link is in the show notes.